Today I'll be talking about Africa stalking, and then I'll be talking about an interesting product called Elarian. It's important that I talk about Africa stalking because you would come to understand what Africa stalking is about and why companies like Africa stalking make Elarian a powerful product. So Africa stalking, the way I like to define it, is something that sits in between a telecommunications provider like MTN, Etisalat, and your user. So you see, you need to access, as a developer, you build products that accesses people, right? You could be building a website, you could be building an Android application, but you need to access people. There are many ways you can access people. Android application, website. You could also decide that you want to access them over USSD, for example. You want them to dial a USSD code and reach your application. You can decide you want them to access you over SMS. Maybe you want an interactive flow. Someone asks for a loan on an SMS short code, they get a response, you respond to that, and that communication goes on. You could also, great, I think the slides are almost here. You could also decide, for example, that you want to run some sort of campaign and you want to give out airtime. So Africa Stalking provides APIs that cuts across this segment that can allow you to communicate with an end user. So the Elarian platform has different interesting features. For example, the customer data is available to you. You can do analytics. You can do reminders, which is an interesting feature I want to talk about. So if you were building a loan application, for example, and what are the things that you need to do? You need to give out money. You need to receive money. Let's put all that aside for a moment. Whenever you give out money, you need to be able to track when that user should pay back. If you want to write that into your application, there's some complex programming that might go into that. An advanced programmer might say, okay, so I'll keep a timer in the system, and that timer is aware of when it started and when it's going to end. So when the timer reaches the end point, then I can perform a particular action. Well, that's fine, but if you're doing that, it means that you are allocating memory resources to keeping that timer alive, to keeping that timer in check, and you also face a big problem, which is what if your application crashes in between? Does it mean that every single timer you started before that has gone lost, and then customers can just walk away with your money without you reminding them? Well, that's a problem you wouldn't worry about if you're using Elarian, because for Elarian, you just need to make a call using the customer ID. Like I've said, the customer is an identity. So you could call a dial customer in your code. Dial would have his mobile number, and you could say dial.add reminder, and then you put a tag for that reminder, you put some details you want around the reminder, and the time you want it to fire. So Elarian then worries about, when does this fire, or what is going on? Your application is really not concerned about keeping that timer active. Elarian does all that for you. There's also tags. So tags more or less just means that you can tag a customer, and that would help you in analytics. So if you tag, like I said, the main thing about Elarian is you are treating every customer as a single identity in your code. So when you're interfacing with a customer and you've tagged this one customer as debtor, for example, Dio is a debtor, and then the other customer comes in but it's not a debtor, you can then run analytics at the end of the day and say, let me see all debtors that have come to my platform on this day, and then you can see that. So Elarian allows you to build around your customer, and it's scalable, it's reactive, and it has low infrastructural needs. I'll tell you one thing. The truth is, when you're building an application as an engineer, and this is one of the reasons why the more experience you get as a developer, the more complex code you start to write, you start to move up in your hierarchy and become a senior developer and all that. It's because you always have to face this problem. Scalability and reactiveness. It's a big problem you have to face. If you're writing an application today that takes in 10 users, tomorrow when the application starts to take in 10 million users, what do? You need to be able to deal with that. It's normally a big struggle for organizations who are growing, but Elarian allows you to write that, and you really are not worrying about that. So Elarian takes care of all that for you. So the same code you've written for that one customer can take 50,000 customers, for example. So Elarian makes sure that you're not bothered about stuff like that. And also that also means that you're not worried about infrastructural needs. So normally when you scale your application, the more complex your application gets, there are more demands as to, okay, how much memory do I have, how much RAM do I have? and all that interesting stuff. So, Elarian allows you treat the customer, that it's really customer focused. So it's a programming language that is biased towards the customer. You treat each customer as a single unit and you react to what the customer is doing. One good thing about Elarian also is that that particular customer or any customer that accesses your application, you can call that customer state at some point in time. So state is always an interesting thing when writing code, because you need to be able to know where somebody is at one point in time. Like I've said, our normal code we write is just logic after logic after logic. But when we start to write complex applications, it's important for us to know that this particular user is coming into the application, but he's not starting from here. He has gone to level C, and I want to continue from there. So that's what state is. So what Elarian allows you to do is you can get the state of each customer. There's a function you can call customer.getState. It's really that easy, and you can get the state of that customer without having to save anything. And the good thing is the state and all we've talked about is available across all channels. So it doesn't matter if you're using Africa Stalking SMS or InfoBeep SMS, or I saw some interesting guys today also doing SMS. I don't remember their names, but it doesn't matter what channel it is you're using. Every single thing you can use on Elarian, and you can connect them and collapse them into one. Okay, so what this means, like I'm sure you've heard me repeat, is that every single thing happens in the context of a customer. So it's a new way to think about writing code, because now you're reacting to what your customer is doing. You're not just writing logic after logic after logic. So it gives you a whole lot you can do. You can access readily available cache, which is just some records that are available in memory. You can simplify how you target different customers. And you can initiate engagements to your customers. So Elarian in itself also supports the whole idea of a payment wallet. The reason why that is an interesting feature and is something worth talking about is that as a business, your flow might require you to collect money from users. And it's possible that you might be doing that across many channels. So maybe you have a website where you've integrated Paystack, maybe some other place you're doing this, you're doing that. Elarian can allow you access all that, and all that payment can fit into something called an Elarian purse. So when you have an Elarian purse, you can receive payments from your customers. If you're, for example, if you're an international organization and you know in each country that you're in, maybe there are different payment providers you have to use. If you're in Kenya, for example, you might want to use this thing called M-Pesa. It's really fun. It's mobile money, which unfortunately we don't have in Nigeria. If you're in Nigeria, however, you need to do bank or card. There's no other way you can accept payment in Nigeria, unfortunately. So any single thing it is you're doing still with Elarian, you can bundle that all into one, and you can treat that as an entity. Okay, so the customer object is programmable. So what this means is that you can personalize your customers' experiences. This is an interesting example. So let's say you have a customer called Grace. Grace wants a bank account statement, but she wants it via WhatsApp. And Calvin is another customer, but he wants it via email. How do you achieve that? That's actually pretty easy with Elarian. There are many things you can do. You can add a tag to Grace, for example, and just say WhatsApp. You can add the tag to Calvin and say email. So whenever it is that these customers, maybe you've added a timer for, perfect example, bank sends the bank statements like every 30 days or something, right? So maybe you've added a timer for 30 days. When that timer fires on Elarian, you want to be able to say, Grace wants it via email, Calvin wants it via WhatsApp, and you can tell all these things from your Elarian, using the Elarian framework. So this also means you can dive into insights from your customers. You can use the metadata layer, and you can enrich your communication with your customer and the engagements with your customer, because you're tracking their events and you are interacting with the events that your customer is doing. This is a point I've talked about already. So it means you can scale, you can handle more traffic with your application because you're using Elarian, because you're not worried about the complexity that comes with building a big application. Instead, you're worried about how do I target my customer. So your code is moving away from how complex or technical does it have to be? It starts to become, how best do I target my customers? The whole idea of Elarian in itself, when you start to think about it in a broader aspect, it makes the work of everybody better. The developer is happier because it's a lot easier to tell what is happening, and you're worrying less about different complex things, and you also have the Elarian commands at your disposal, which means that some of the complex parts of codes are not really your problem anymore. Okay, so Elarian, like I've talked about, it follows a bring your own channel model. I've explained that already. It means that you can bring Twilio, you can bring Stripe, you can bring Africa Stalking. I strongly recommend Africa Stalking for obvious reasons. But you can decide to bring Twilio, you can decide to bring InfoBeep, really any SMS provider or channel that you want to use, you can bring them into Elarian and still react to things that your customers are doing across all those channels. Yeah, and so you can, one of the cool things about that is that you can change things without actually changing your code. Let me give you an example. So if you're sending an SMS and you have a sender ID and your sender ID is Dio, for example, you've raised Dio as a sender ID at Africa Stalking, you've raised it at Twilio, you've raised it at InfoBeep. For one reason or the other, you've decided, oh, today I don't want to use Twilio, I want to use Africa Stalking. What do? Normally, you would need to make some changes in your code, but using Elarian, it's a lot more different. You can just switch channels, and you don't have to worry about updating your code. So this is the current view from Elarian. If you go to Elarian and you open an account and you go to the provider section, this is what you see. As you've seen, Africa Stalking is already available, Twilio is available, Mailgun is something we're looking to implement, and a couple of the others. You can see some interesting implementations. We have Paystack, Flutterwave, Venmo. So what this means is that if you're a business and you want to accept payment across any of these payment providers, you only just need to listen for a payment. You don't need to worry about what the technicalities are regarding connecting to all those people. You just need to make sure your account is well set up with these guys, provide your API keys to Elarian, and then you can react to payments from your customers. And Elarian will tell you what channel the payment is coming from in case you need to use that in your code as well. So Elarian boosts productivity for developers, scalability. It allows you to treat your customer as a point of abstraction. So like I said, you're coding against your customer. It's a modern development experience. I'm sure I have to walk you through what it feels like, because I really don't think there's much code that you might be writing now that feels like this, because this really allows you to target your customers and do interesting things with your customers. So you have a platform that allows you code against your customers and allow them to manage different actions from a customer's point of view. This is also something I've talked about. So Elarian allows you to do some interesting things with analytics. So you want to look at your customer and say, all customers that have engaged with my application from 14 days ago till now, and they've engaged to me with my company via Facebook, I want to see all those ones, and let's see if their messages were sent or if they received their notifications or whatever it is you're doing. So you can tally all these things and you can line them up and you can do analytics across that. So what this means now is that it's not limited to only Facebook. If you're doing that across Twitter, across, I don't know, Africa Stalking, you want to see the number of sent messages, Twilio, you can run all those analytics and get some interesting insights from that. So maybe you're wondering, the language I write, is it supported by Elarian? Well, at the moment, we have SDKs for each of these programming languages: JavaScript, Java, Python, PHP, Ruby, Golang, and there are a couple of others coming along. And obviously, the SDKs are open source, so in case you want to take a look and make some interesting changes, I'm sure we'll be sure to review them and see how that goes. So the big question, what can you build with Elarian? The truth, anything. You can build anything with Elarian. You could build a fintech, a financial institution. Like I said, you could receive money, you could interact with your customers over WhatsApp or any other means. You could build an agricultural firm, you could build an health firm, you could build logistics, you could do energy, you could do e-commerce. That would be an interesting thing to do. You could do marketing, you could do advertising. And that comes to the end of my slide. So what I would quickly like to do at the end is just show you a quick demo on Elarian. All right. So Elarian has it has the REPL, which allows me to actually write code on Elarian and run that. So I don't need to be bothered about if my colleague has JavaScript on his laptop or not. So let's run this. So the first thing you do when you're dealing with Elarian is you have to connect to the Elarian platform. So the unconnected action here just logs that the app is running. So that means we're connected to Elarian right now and we can start doing interesting stuff. So what we will do is we're going to interface with a WhatsApp number and we'll be requesting for a loan. Everything would be handled on Elarian. Okay, so I have a couple of channels that have been set up. So if you go to providers, then that's what I'm saying. You can set up any channel across any provider, but I've set these ones up just for the test. So let's just run with that. We can see the active connection here to Elarian, and that's my my connection to Elarian. Yeah, so let's do this. And so my app is running. What I would then do is I will open the Elarian sandbox, the simulator. Yeah, and let me just use a test number. So 09033565699, for example. Yeah, so Elarian gives you more or less like a mobile phone. I hope this is clear. All right, so it's a mobile phone. It's on the sandbox, so you can mess around with this and see how the API actually works. So what we're going to do is we'll send a WhatsApp message to my business number requesting for a loan. I've tried to make this demo as simple as possible, so if you feel it's not complex enough, please feel free to play around with the API and complicate it as much as you like. So the keyword to request for a loan I've configured as loan, L-O-A-N. So let's say we send loan. Elarian, well, my application is responding using Elarian. Hi there, happy to meet you. What amount do you want to receive in NG, in Nigerian Naira? So if we look at the code, which I hope is clear, you can see, so what's happening here is, like I said, Elarian allows you to react to different actions. Is this clear? Yes. Okay. So you can react to an error. Elarian is the client. Client equals Elarian. This is how you define or declare Elarian. So on an error, you log it. On a reminder, it's going to do whatever is in this function on reminder. This is JavaScript, but I think it's pretty easy to understand anyways. If you received WhatsApp, it's going to do whatever is in this function, receive WhatsApp. On a USSD, I didn't connect this, so I could just have removed that. But, so the idea, if we actually run this and connect USSD to this, what will just happen is whenever my user dials a USSD code, it will just log, got it dial. But we can make it as complicated as we want it to be. So what's happening right now, when you message Elarian, and you get that thing, is that on received WhatsApp, what we're doing is we're saying, okay, if the text that comes in is loan, then just tell the user, this is customer. So customer is that specific customer that sent that WhatsApp message. That's why I'm saying you're coding against a particular customer. So this particular customer, we could call this customer Dio if we want. But in reality, because anyone is dialing the code, it could be any customer, so there's no need to personalize that. But the customer variable in itself is personalized. So customer.send message, the channel is going to be WhatsApp. Like I've said, you can switch channels. You can have an SMS channel, you can have a voice channel, and you are sending the customer this thing. So the WhatsApp channel, this is my WhatsApp, my company's WhatsApp number. So we send him, hi there, happy to meet you, type the amount that you want. So the next step, we'll just show it in code before we actually do it. So it says if WhatsApp is received again, and the text is 500, then it says, oh great, we will credit your account. The flow is not very complex, so I had coded 500 into that just so it's easy to understand. So let's request for a loan, 500. Great, we will credit your account. And then what happens is, so this next set of code I would explain. So what happens is we set a timeout. Because in reality, when you request for a loan, it doesn't instantly tell you you've gotten a loan. So let's just simulate that and say the code should wait for a few seconds and then tell you, oh, your account has been credited. If we go back to the simulator now, we would see that your account has been credited. Along with doing that, we would also add a reminder on that particular customer that just requested the loan. So customer.add_reminder, the key, I probably don't need to explain that, but the key is loaner, which is my application's name, and then the payload I'm sending is 500 naira, which is what the customer has said they want to borrow. We'll do this for 30 seconds, so the reminder is on for 30 seconds, and by now, actually, the reminder should have fired. So if you go back, 30 seconds after, on WhatsApp, my customer received this message saying, please pay back your loan amount of 500 naira. So all this has been done using Elarian, and you can see you're able to do that just in like 60-something lines of code, which I assure you it's quite easy to pull off with that less amount of code. So the whole idea of Elarian, I think, becomes clear in this way. So you can react to different actions from your users, and you can program around a customer. Okay, I think I have demoed Elarian pretty well. If I were to keep talking, I would use the whole day. So let me just ask if there are questions. There are not so many of us left here, unfortunately, but does anybody have questions? Okay.
Let's say I offer data service, like people buy data from me, and then I want a particular code. The customer should dial a particular code, and this code should be linked to any bank at all that the customer is dealing with. First Bank, UBA, whatever. Okay, and at the end of the day, they should be able to purchase that data through their bank with my code. Is that possible?
Okay, so that is possible theoretically. The problem is that First Bank would not give you access to somebody's account. That is the problem. But if First Bank were to say, oh, it's possible for anybody to come and debit a user's account, and this is the API to do that, Elarian just needs to implement that API, and then you don't need to bother about which bank the customer is dialing for. We'll just tell you on bank record or on bank requests, and then you can handle that on bank request, just like the way I handle on received WhatsApp. You can say on bank requests, send the person data. So the problem is not Elarian. That's not why you won't be able to do it, but the bank, for example.
How can such idea be? Is it possible for such idea to come up?
It's not impossible, but because of the way things are in Nigeria, it might be a bit tricky. The problem is that for you currently in Nigeria to handle payments, you need to debit a card or a bank account. So what that would mean would be that whenever a user dials your channel where they want to use to request data, they have to enter their credit card details, or they have to enter their bank account number, and you walk through that process. It's possible. In fact, I could sit down here and write a demo for that for you, but the question you have to ask yourself is how many people would sit down and start dialing their card number on a USSD or on WhatsApp just so that they can buy data when they could easily just dial *737 *500. That's just the problem. Thank you very much for the question. Any other questions? Okay. Thanks everybody.